Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the pattern builder tool in Illustrator to create some interesting looking patterns. So let's get started. What I've created are three interesting graphics, some more complex than others, some a bit jagged, some a bit more organic. With our design on the left, I've simply just used the square tool to build a kind of simple tessellation, really nicely done. I'm then going to use the selection tool, the black arrow. I'm going to highlight all that design, none of the others, just that one. I'm then going to go up the top of the screen where it says object, and I'm going to go down to pattern. From here, there is an option that says make. And when you click on this, it'll generate an example of how the pattern can look. Now with our pattern options tool, which will appear and sometimes float, sometimes it'll appear on the right-hand side, you can give your pattern a name. I'm going to call this one just square. And you can give it different types and explore different layout options. So there's brick by row, there's brick by column. Sometimes it doesn't change much. Sometimes there's hex by column, which can alter your design, as well as hex by row. I'm just going to use a simple grid pattern, and I'm going to keep the width and height measurements the exact same. When I'm happy with how that looks, I'm going to hit escape. And now I have a pattern that will be sitting in my swatches here. When you click on your little pattern, it means you can then apply it. So let's say I'm going to build a simple square. Let's say I just draw one like this, a nice rectangle. As part of my fill, if I use the black arrow and I highlight my shape like so, I can open up my swatches panel and I can click on that pattern and it will fill to that shape, which will then adjust as I then make those changes. So a pretty cool example of how to build an interesting pattern nice and simply. From there, if you highlight and click on your pattern, hit escape to get rid of that, you can then go over to the top right corner where there's those three little lines, and you can save this swatch to a library. I'm going to call this a square pattern. I'm going to hit save. Now the reason why I want to do that is because I want to then potentially use that pattern later on. Before I get into that, I want to create my last two patterns. So again, same process. I'm going to highlight my design, this one a bit more jagged. So I'm going to hit object, go to pattern, and go to make. For this one, I don't think the grid option is going to work. I'm going to call this one spiky because I think it's pretty spiky. And I'm going to use the option brick by column. I think that's going to work a little bit better and fill up a bit more space. I can then make adjustments to the width and height. So I might try out different measurements like 75 and it'll adjust the height accordingly. I'm quite happy with that. It may not be 100% perfect, but you can make those minor tweaks later on in your own time. I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit escape to get out of the pattern builder tool. I'm going to go to my swatches, click on my pattern, and I'm going to do the same process where I use the three arrows and then save the swatch to my library, calling this one spiky. So I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to do it again for my final design, which is a bit more organic. And as you can see, it's a nice symbol, and symbols often make really nice patterns, particularly if we're going to use them on things like posters or packaging. So I'm going to go to object, I'm going to go to pattern, I'm going to go to make. For this particular pattern, I think I'm going to use the brick by row feature, just because I think the kind of alternating diagonals will work really effectively. I'm going to experiment by making the width about 85 millimeters, which will adjust the height. And I think that gives the design a bit more breathing space. Excellent. So when I'm happy with that, I'm going to hit escape, and I can always name that one later. I'm going to click on that new pattern, and I'm going to save it again to my library. I'm going to call this one floral. Excellent. So now I've got those three patterns that I've created relatively quickly of different levels of complexity, and they're ready to be used and applied to different shapes. In a previous video, I was creating a packaging netting like so. For this example, I've got my outline of my netting, and I'm going to give it a hollow fill just to see what it looks like without a background. Now, when I click on the shape with my black arrow, I can then apply my pattern. But if I go to my swatches, it is often empty. So we need to actually open up our swatches. So if we go to open swatch library, we can then go to user defined, and there should be a list of our patterns there. I'm going to fill this one with my floral pattern. And as we can see, our swatches panel has loaded up, and I can click on the pattern I'd like to apply. I can test out all three of my designs to see which one works best. And I think they're all pretty effective, but I quite like the spiky option. I think that's pretty good. Now, what you'll notice with my patterns that I've created is that I've left the background white, and I've done that so then later on a layer underneath, I can change and experiment with the background color rather than committing to it right now. I've left gaps that I can then put typeface in. I can layer things over and make adjustments later on. But the pattern tool is a great feature, and I suggest you experiment with it.